5:30 a.m. Bel Air was wrapped in a layer of fog as thin as silk, soft, but cold enough to make your skin flinch. The hills curved like the spine of a sleeping beast. No car horns, no footsteps, just the breath of nature, crisp, ancient, untouched. On a street paved smooth as glass, Julian Vance ran. His strides were steady, precise, like the inner workings of a Swiss watch. But nothing about him was flashy. He wore a faded charcoal Nike Dri-FIT shirt. No smartwatch, no earbuds, no security detail trailing him. Just a single key tucked into his right pocket, tapping rhythmically against his thigh with each step. The sun hadn't broken yet, but sweat already purled on his skin, not the heavy sweat of exertion, but faint glistening droplets catching the dim sky like dull diamonds. They hit the pavement and disappeared like the unseen sacrifices of a black man who had climbed too far for permission. With each footfall, memories rose like mist. A cramped garage in Inglewood, the smell of motor oil on his father's hands, an old pickup truck with a printout of Bel Air taped to the dash from Google Maps. One day, son, you'll run there. Not in a car, with your own legs, with your own mind. His father's voice still lingered, gentle but weighted. Julian had run far, but this morning he wasn't running to get anywhere. He was running to return. Today was his father's death anniversary. Julian stopped in front of the west gate of the Crestwood Estates. The Crestwood Estates, not just a gated community in Bel Air. It was a fortress of silent order where every paving stone and every line of security code carried an encoded bias. Here, wealth wasn't enough. You had to belong. This gate didn't open, it judged. A structure forged from hammered bronze and obsidian black stone, it was both object and ideology. It wasn't built to protect. It was built to filter a class firewall designed to see everything, except the person standing in front of it. A security booth sat adjacent. Blue light from the monitors inside warped the face behind the glass, an image of digitized indifference. The door creaked open. Eleanor Croft stepped out. She didn't walk, she performed. She moved like a living sculpture. White blazer pristine, pressed to perfection. Blonde hair sculpted back like polished glass. Her heels struck the granite floor with a crisp metronomic click, each one like a countdown to confrontation. She wore sunglasses, but Julian could feel the blade behind the lenses. A faint smile touched her lips, thin, sharp, like the edge of a razor. Eleanor, cool as ice deliveries and service staff enter from the lower gate. This entrance is closed. No question, no confirmation, just command. Julian, calm, low, I live here. A beat. Wind swept through. Fog clung to the bronze railings. Eleanor looked him over head to toe. Her gaze sliced through him like an X-ray. A worn workout shirt. No watch, no car, no signals of belonging. She didn't need to speak. Her silence was a sentence. Eleanor, a smirk laced with mockery. Sure you do, and I'm the Queen of England. Julian stepped forward just enough for the biometric sensor to register movement. A dry beep, like the sound of an ATM rejecting a bad card. Only this time it wasn't a card being denied. It was a name, a place, a person. Security system flat, robotic, access denied. Unrecognized biometric. A beat. The wind stilled. No birds, no rustle. Just Julian's heartbeat, deep and slow but heavy. The camera zooms in. His face doesn't flinch, but something cracks inside. A piece of morning peace. Shattered. He wasn't looking at Eleanor. He wasn't looking at the gate. He was staring into a newer version of the old beast he'd fought all his life. The lethal hybrid of technology and prejudice. Eleanor whispered just loud enough for him to hear. Not everyone gets in, you know. Julian stood still. No words. No protest. No need to move. because he knew this moment had been encoded into America's DNA long ago, a black man standing in front of a gate that guarded a world he helped build and still being shut out by a system he had once programmed himself, now recoded to serve someone else's fear. Eleanor turned away thinking she had won, but she didn't realize she had just done the one thing the system always feared most. She activated a man who had stayed silent for too long. A beat. Julian didn't move. No rebuttal, no defense, no effort to justify himself. The anger didn't show on his face, it soaked inward, slow and acidic like rust eating into steel. Eleanor pulled the radio from her belt. Her hands didn't shake. Her fingers pressed the button with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years mastering authority. Eleanor into radio voice, clinical and cold central. This is Croft at Westgate. Reporting code 1096. Male subject non-compliant, possibly impersonating a resident. Requesting unit response. A beat. 1096, an innocent-sounding code, but one that could trigger a full-scale security response, as if dealing with a mentally unstable threat. A code that didn't exist in Julian's system, but existed within the logic of inherited fear. The air thickened. Julian remained still, but his gaze shifted. No longer calm. Now calculating. In the distance, an off-white delivery truck slowed as it approached. On the side, Bloom and Quill. Fine botanicals, luxury arrangements. Behind the wheel, Mateo, a 25-year-old Latino man, cap on backward, wearing a dark polo shirt. His eyes were puffy, sleepless. He recognized Julian instantly. The man who always signed for his floral deliveries with a quiet, "Thank you, have a good day," the kind of man who clearly belonged. The truck rolled to a stop. Mateo lowered the window. Mateo, polite, uncertain, "Excuse me, but that's Mr. Vance, Julian Vance. I deliver flowers to his house, Villa 4, every week." A beat. Eleanor turned to him. The way she turned it was like a trap door slamming shut. Quick, cold, erasing whoever just dared to speak. Eleanor, sharp as a scalpel, "Thank you for your concern, but this doesn't involve you. Please stay back. This is an internal security matter." It wasn't just dismissal, it was exile from the conversation. She didn't just deny the truth. She erased the witness. Mateo froze but didn't back away. He reached into the cab, pulled out his phone. Didn't raise it, didn't make a scene, just tapped to record. Quietly. Like someone who had seen this happen before somewhere else. Two more security officers emerged behind Eleanor. One older face drawn tired, as if he had seen too many versions of this before. One younger, wide-eyed, still learning how to hide confusion. Both armed, though it was unclear if they were here to confront a threat or their own internal discomfort. The younger man glanced at Julian, then at Eleanor. A beat. No one spoke. Julian still hadn't said a word, but his next move spoke louder than any argument. He looked up toward the dome-shaped security camera perched on the side of the gate. His eyes were a silent command, a data stream loaded with meaning. Then he lifted his hand and brushed the titanium ring on his fourth finger. Smooth, unmarked, plain. But inside that ring, a high-level biometric encryption key. No one noticed, but inside the booth something shifted. The monitor in front of Eleanor flickered. A line of green text pulsed in the corner, soft and eerie like deep-sea bioluminescence system diagnostic, initiated by primary admin. Eleanor's jaw tightened. She tapped rapidly, trying to override, but windows slid away. Commands were blocked, parameters overwritten. She wasn't controlling the system. The system was auditing her. Eleanor muttering, "This can't be happening." Sweat prickled at her temple. not from heat but from losing control of something she thought was hers. She yanked her personal phone from her blazer. No more radio. She went straight to the LAPD. Eleanor urgent, nearly trembling, but still grasping for control. LAPD, I need to report an active breach. Male subject black, attempting to access the Crestwood security system. Possible cyber attack. Yes, he's here now. I need units dispatched immediately. A beat. Julian turned to her, and for the first time his gaze was harder than the obsidian stone surrounding them. Julian, low, cold, unyielding. You just crossed the final line, Ms. Croft. Eleanor, mocking chuckle. The only mistake here is thinking you could outmaneuver me. A beat. From far off, the faint sound of sirens rose soft but certain. The air grew heavy, dense as concrete. Mateo kept filming. The young guard swallowed hard. Eleanor gripped her phone tighter, and Julian stood unmoving. But in that silence, everyone sensed it. A storm was coming. Not fire, not fists, not rage. Data. The sirens echoed from down the road, a familiar sound, but this time it meant something different. No longer a signal of protection. Now a verdict was sent to the wrong address. Mateo kept recording. Inside, the gated enclave curtains shifted. Faces peeked out from behind glass. Others logged into the Crestwood Cam app. The digital wall was beginning to crack. Julian tapped his ring again. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't need to explain. Julian, calm, as if addressing a universe that had long awaited this moment. Chimera. Activate protocol judgment. Now. Silence. Then every monitor inside the security booth flickered, blinked, then changed. Lines of code surged across the screens like a flood, green, silver, white. The truth log interface lit up. Not a security feed. A courtroom of cold light in the dark halls of bias. Every screen displayed the same report: property identification, Vance Estate. Lot 4A. Registered owner Julian Vance, since 2015. Founder and CEO, Chimera Systems. Major shareholder, Crestwood Holdings, LLC. Governing board member, Norbank Financial. Every detail is verified through internal blockchain records. Unfakeable, unalterable, undeniable. The camera cut across reactions, Eleanor speechless. The young security officer stepped back instinctively. The older guard lowered his head. Mateo stunned his phone, shaking slightly in his hand. Then another screen popped up. This time it wasn't about property. It was about a person. Personnel record, Eleanor Croft. Position, Chief of Security, Crestwood Estates. 7 complaints, alleged racial discrimination, 2019 to 2025. All dismissed by mid-level management. Live audio transcript. Call to LAPD auto-forwarded to Chimera Legal Division. Violations, misuse of authority, false report, unauthorized escalation. Security clearance suspended. The screen glowed red. Then one final line appeared, bold and pulsing: access revoked. You are no longer a gatekeeper. Behind Julian, the gate began to open. Silently, effortlessly, not with noise, with authority. The authority of truth made digital. Eleanor stared at the screen. Her face was pale like soot from a fire long dead. Her fingers, trembling slowly, lowered the radio. Her phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Marcus Lenning, General Counsel, Crestwood Holdings. She didn't answer. The lights in the security booth flickered off, then back on. Chimera had returned to original control. Every override command she tried to send was blocked. The system wasn't glitching. It had made a decision. The young guard stepped back again. But this time the look he gave her wasn't one of deference. It was the look of someone just waking from a spell. Julian stepped through the open gate. One step. No urgency. No explanation. The camera followed him. Matteo stunned, the guards silent. Eleanor collapsed in place without falling. Her heels no longer clicked. They were still, rooted in place like two pillars of ice melting under the heat of data. No one stopped him. No one dared. Because nothing can stop a truth that's finally risen. Just before he disappeared inside, Julian paused, turned his head slightly, not toward Eleanor, but toward the dome camera now recording every second, and then one sentence, the final line in a personal case file written over decades. Julian low, steady, not a threat, but a fact I didn't need to break the wall. I only needed to show it, who built the gate. Julian vanished inside, not like a victor, but like someone who had just reclaimed ground long occupied by lies. The storm left no fire, no wreckage, only silence and exposure. The camera lingered on Eleanor's face. She looked 10 years older, alone, dwarfed by screens she no longer controlled. A woman who once embodied the system now reduced to the echo of erased code. Julian didn't head straight for the house. He paused midway through the granite courtyard, where the late morning light began casting shadows like ink spills across the stone. He turned back. Eleanor was still there, back straight, unmoving like a crumbling statue that hadn't quite collapsed yet. No more radio, no more codes, just two people. And the truth between them sharp and bare like broken glass, exposing both wound and motive. Julian walked toward her, not threatening, just present. Like a man who had nothing left to prove. Julian's voice no longer cold, but low, almost sorrowful. Why, Eleanor, who taught you to be this afraid? A pause. Eleanor turned her face away, but not fast enough to hide the panic in her eyes, and beneath it, emptiness. Eleanor stammering, her voice cracking for the first time. I was just doing my job, maintaining order, the rules. Julian shaking his head gently, eyes soft but firm. No, you weren't following the rules. You were following your fear, and you turned it into a weapon against someone who just wanted to come home. The breeze passed through like a quiet rebuke. Neither of them spoke again. There was no need. The camera held on Eleanor's face, lips pressed tight, eyes wet, but no tears, because tears are a luxury power that doesn't allow itself when it begins to crumble. Matteo had stopped recording a while ago. The phone now hung loosely in his hand. His face no longer defiant, just reflective. He had just witnessed something bigger than racism, bigger than a clash of ranks. He had witnessed history split open and begin rewriting itself right here on this cold sidewalk. A pearl-white Tesla pulled up a few yards away. The window rolled down. Inside, a woman with silver hair, thin-framed glasses, board member of a major investment trust, looked directly at Julian. She nodded. Not the polite kind of nod. The kind shared between two people who've both been misjudged. For all the wrong reasons. The young security officer stepped forward slowly, head slightly lowered, not in fear, but in shame. Young security officer, quiet, sincere, Mr. Vance. I'm sorry. Julian placing a hand on his shoulder, no resentment in his eyes. Don't be sorry. Learn. Just a light touch. But it felt like passing on a flame, not through tech, but through humanity. Julian stepped inside the house. The door closed behind him soundlessly. No fingerprint scan. No voice command. Just presence. The presence of someone who belongs. Inside the estate was vast and quiet. Not the sterile quiet of a boardroom, but the kind that listens like even the walls knew he had returned. He passed the living room, walked past an abstract sculpture gifted by a Nigerian artist, past the piano, he hadn't touched it in 7 months. He stopped in front of a wall. It held only one thing, a black and white photo. A man in a work uniform, hands covered in grease, smiling. A simple, honest smile. Not taken for social media, taken to remember a rare moment of pride. His father. Julian reached out and placed his hand on the glass. He closed his eyes not to block the emotion, but to hear clearly the words that had never really stopped echoing. A quiet monologue. A whisper not meant for the world, but for the legacy living inside him. Julian softly, "I'm home, Dad. This time. They can't keep me out. I didn't run, I stood on the ground we built." He didn't cry, but a single drop of sweat slid from his temple like a tear. Not from exhaustion, from release. Outside, the sun rose higher. The Crestwood Estates still stood proud, grand, immovable. But today the gate had opened, for a different reason. Not by order, not by fingerprint, but because truth finally spoke, and this time it was heard. Julian stood in the center of the room, hand still resting on his father's photograph. There was nothing left to say. The story didn't need punctuation, because sometimes victory doesn't sound like applause. It lives in the quiet moment, when you no longer have to prove who you are to anyone. It's still the west gate of the Crestwood Estates. The obsidian slabs still shine. The bronze structure still gleams like an oath time couldn't fade. But the air is different now. The young security officer, now promoted to shift supervisor, stands where Eleanor once did. No more crisp white uniform of authority. Just a simple shirt sleeves, casually rolled posture, calm. A delivery driver approaches. The officer looks him in the eye, nods, smiles. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" It's not the tech that opens the gate. It's the human. On the booth screen next to the live feed, one small glowing line always remains visible. The Vance principle. Dignity first, verification second. Cut to a video conference room, glass walls, bright white lights, the Crestwood Holdings logo faint in the background. Julian is speaking to the board of directors. He's not standing, not raising his voice, just sitting there, eyes clear, toned, steady, not out of dominance, but out of duty. Julian Eleanor Croft won't face prosecution. She'll retire early with access to psychological support. But that doesn't fix the root problem. So I propose we launch the Vance Foundation. $10 million in initial funding dedicated to anti-bias training and emotional intelligence development for civilian security forces nationwide. The chairman nods. One by one, hands rise. Vote approved. No objections. Julian leans back slightly. No smile. Just a brief closing of his eyes, like a weight quietly placed down. 1 year later. It's morning again in Bel Air. Cold. The same road. Fresh asphalt. Julian Vance is jogging again. Same running outfit. Same tiny key in his pocket. No smartwatch. No entourage. Just him and the rhythm of his heart. He's not running to prove anything now. He runs for the peace he fought to reclaim. From afar, the gate opens before he even approaches. No hand wave, no voice ID. Chimera already knows. But what truly changed isn't in the system. It's in how the system was reprogrammed by people. He doesn't stop. He jogs through, smoothly, as if there were never a wall there at all. The camera pulls back. Higher, wider. Julian becomes just a small figure on a long road, the rising sun ahead of him golden wide, and indiscriminate to those who walk in its light. Julian's voice returns, not a monologue, an echo for anyone who's ever been locked out of something they should have belonged to. Julian voiceover. They say you have to tear down walls. They're wrong. You don't have to break down walls. You just have to build doors wide enough, smart enough, strong enough, until the walls around them become irrelevant. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a question, or a quiet longing you haven't named yet, don't let it stop here. Like, share, and subscribe to Story Precious, where stories don't just get told, they get felt. Not to impress, but to awaken. Not to end, but to begin again in the right place.